have still very dry air, still gusty winds, just not quite as extreme. But let's back it out, and I promise we're going to get to a wind forecast in a moment here. I'm going to spend several minutes on what's happening with the weather. We've done a lot of like micro scale stuff. This spot, this spot, this spot. Let me show you more of a macro view of what's just broadly going on across our area, because I know if you're watching, it can get a little overwhelming just with everything we have happening. So we have several fires we're obviously monitoring. What you're looking at right here is a map. You see a lot of this is generally north of Los Angeles. And then not only do we have the fires marked here, but also you notice the evacuation zone. So if, we can have the control room kind of go place by place. Let's come into the Palisades Fire now. So you're going to notice a couple of things. First of all, the acreage. It's more than 15,000 acres. You see the orange color around the Palisades Fire. That's basically the fire footprint. And what is incredible when we look at this here on the left side of the screen, notice that grayish white color right there. That is the burn scar from the Franklin fire around Malibu last month. We know that was a big fire. That was, I believe, about 4,000 acres. And you see how the Palisades Fire, just in terms of the land that it covers, is multiple times the size of the Franklin fire in that burn scar area there on the left. And the fire went up to the burn scar. So that's pretty incredible. On the right side or east side of the Palisades fire, you can see how it's just barely encroaching on kind of the border of the Brentwood area. And then as we come in, I want to come in closer to Santa Monica if we can, because you'll see the borders now of the evacuation zone. So we've got the reddish, kind of pinkish color. That is the evacuation order. That's mandatory. And that changed this afternoon. It got extended into more of Santa Monica. So now kind of southeast or down the coast of San Vicente, including up to, if we come in a little bit closer, I believe, to Montana, and then from Montana, from the coast up to 11th Street. So that's an area that was new today that has a mandatory evacuation order. Then you see the yellow spots. Those are evacuation warnings, and I'll remind you that means that it's not mandatory, but in terms of the ready, set, go, go would be the order, the red, set, meaning kind of get ready to go if needed, would be in yellow. So you have the option to evacuate. It's suggested if you can, you should. And those yellow spots could potentially turn into mandatory red evacuation orders. And so that includes more parts of Santa Monica as well. All right, let's back it out now. Let's go look a little farther east up to the Eaton Fire. Let's do that. We're going to skip over the Sunset Fire in a moment. So here's the Eaton Fire, which is now more than 10,000 acres. Again, this is a massive area right here. You see the large burn scar, and then you see the large area with the evacuation order and the evacuation warning. The warning goes all the way down to the 210. You see it includes parts of Pasadena. From the right side of the screen to the left side of the screen right here, huge area being affected by this one. And we know everything that's going on there. Our reporters have done an amazing job talking about it. Now let's back this out farther. We're going to kind of go in order of when the fire started. So if we can go up to the Hurst fire, so that's up around Sylmar. This one's smaller in size, still impactful. I believe around 700 acres was the estimated coverage of this one. And again, the red spots are mandatory evacuations. The yellows would be evacuation warnings. Then if we go to the right of that, or to the east of that, you see this. Now this is the Lydia fire. So it's kind of, it started just west of Ravenna. You see right there. Large area here, kind of wilderness area. Still some homes and businesses being impacted. I believe this one was around shortly a little more than 300 acres in size. And I know in the press conference we had a little earlier this evening that the officials were saying on this particular one, on the Lydia fire, that forward progress was stopped. And I believe that's the only, of all the fires, the only one where there's really been some good progress in containing it somewhat. And then the newest one that we're aware of is the Sunset Fire. That's the one in the Hollywood Hills. So that's right in the center of your screen right there. And this one smaller, but you know, we're going to, as we get updates on this, we know that acreage is going to grow because it's still weather-wise favorable for these fires to spread. And again, I'll reiterate, the red is the mandatory evacuation, and then yellow is an evacuation warning, which is not mandatory, but could change to mandatory evacuation orders at some point. Okay, so that's kind of like going around the map, showing you everything that's going on. I know you want to know what the wind forecast is like, so let's switch over to our weather graphics right now. We're going to talk still for several minutes about what the weather is looking like. If we can get over to weather 1. And I want to mention, first of all, that red flag warnings continue all the way into Friday. Guys, let me know if we can do that. If not, we can maybe come back. But our weather graphics here are going to show that the red flag warning continues into Friday. You'll remember that this red flag warning was initially issued as a PDS red flag warning. PDS stands for particularly dangerous situation. That part of it has expired, so it's no longer a PDS red flag warning. It's essentially a regular red flag warning, more common, something more of what we're used to here as we go season by season. It's just been unusual that we happen to have 3 of these PDS red flag warnings just this season, and before this season, the last one was in 2020. Those are rare. But now we're in regular red flag warning territory. That's in effect through Friday. Winds have already started to come down today. They will continue to relax a bit overnight. I still have that wind forecast coming up. The next wind peak, by the way, is going to start ramping up midday tomorrow and lasting into Friday morning. Then we expect winds to gradually start going back down Friday over the course of the day. High wind warnings, by the way, there's wind advisories and there's high wind warnings. High wind warnings are more extreme. That's in effect until 10 o'clock tonight, which is an extension. It was originally issued until 6 p.m., extended into 10 p.m. for all these areas here where essentially these fires are going on right now. There's our, quote, regular red flag warning that goes into effect through Friday, excludes a portion of Los Angeles and down the coast through Orange County. Okay, now to our wind forecast, and you're going to see better numbers and less coverage of the insane winds now than what we've had over the last 24 hours, but it's still gusty and still very dry and still very dry vegetation. So as we start this evening and go through the night, here's midnight. Take a look at this. I'll just get out of the way so you can see this. This is a whole lot better. And already right now, I've got wind gusts 20, 30 miles per hour. It's still in some of the mountains. Gusts are up to 50 or 60, but that's already improvement. And you see here as we go through the night, we've got many areas with gusts below 20. Still in some of the mountains, it's going to be a little bit breezy. Let's go from there now into tomorrow morning, and you'll see a drastic change once again. This is that next ramp up we expect as we get later into tomorrow morning. And again, I'll say generally, just let's call it midday tomorrow, is when that peak starts to come back at us. This is a look at noon. Now notice the purple areas. That's anywhere that winds are gusting 35 or higher according to the computer models. And you see some of the numbers plotted. Some numbers still over 50, even over 60 miles per hour. Not uniform strong winds. Portions of Los Angeles will see lighter winds, kind of protected from the mountains, but still winds ramp up tomorrow, so that's why the red flag warning at least goes through there. As we continue through Thursday afternoon, winds are still strong. Here we go into Friday 9 a.m. Notice that timestamp at the top of the graphic right there. We're doing better, but we still have a concerning level of wind. And then as we go later into Friday, this is when this whole Santa Ana wind event really starts to taper off to almost nothing. Winds are certainly looking a whole lot better here by the end of the day Friday. I also want to mention relative humidity, because when we track fire weather conditions, the winds and the humidity are the biggest factors. And then, of course, there are other smaller factors, like, for example, the vegetation, which we know is super dry. Essentially, most areas have seen little to no rain over the last 8 months. So with air this dry, like we've seen today, that's really making things difficult. As we go into tomorrow, it's still very dry air. I mean, we've got a lot of relative humidities here below 20%. And then as we take you into Thursday night, now you see a nice recovery, the humidity going up around LA and near the coast. That's Friday morning, but still it's dry in other spots, and still just overall very dry air through Friday. And this is a big part of the reason why the red flag warning or fire weather warning continues through the day on Friday. And then finally, air quality. We've got various sensors across the area. At times today, it should be no surprise to hear this, but they were registering extremely unhealthy air. We were in the very unhealthy to, I believe, even hazardous for a time in some spots. Between where some of these sensors are, there might be some worse air quality than what they're measuring right now, but we've got a couple areas, more so from the Eaton Fire, measuring unhealthy for sensitive groups with those orange dots right there. So air quality probably going to be an issue as these fires continue to burn for a while. But again, the overall theme here is winds have been going down today. They'll continue to go down tonight. They pick back up tomorrow, but at least with the winds relaxing, I'm hoping that maybe at least from the air, the firefighters are able to kind of just put a dent in things a little bit and maybe start to get things somewhat under control. But the issue is, it's not just like we have one big fire like we saw with December and November. It was one fire to focus on primarily. Here we have so many fires across the area, and even those fires, and Alex, you mentioned this earlier, it's like the Sunset Fire. It's not like it's one spot. It's just several, like a cluster of fires kind of in a general area. I can't imagine how they strategize going about this, but I will say weather-wise, wind-wise, getting a little more favorable for them to air attack these over the course of the night tonight.
As you're saying that, we're seeing a live water drop, so great timing there. Adam, thank you for such a thorough report and forecasting.